Just a reminder that you can catch up on Monday's special video of Doctor Who Season 23, The Unboxing, as well as the latest instalment of the Hits Review, which aired on Tuesday, taking a look at Hits 11, alternatively known as Monster Hits. But now, on AMTV, the Ident Review. Hello, and welcome to the Ident Review, the show where we have a good look and chat about the various television idents that we have come to know and love over the years. And for this instalment, we're taking a look at some more recent idents from a very popular UK channel lead, and that's Dave, the home of witty banter. Some time ago, we had an episode looking at a series of idents that Dave introduced in 2007. If you haven't seen it, do go and check it out. It felt like now was the time to return to Dave and look at some more recent idents that they've produced. What you're going to see was introduced in 2014, and believe me, this set has a lot more variants to each individual ident for the most part, so I'll play the variants together and then add some commentary afterwards. So without further ado, here is the first ident, X-Ray.
In half an hour, it's Have I Got a Bit More News for You. At 10, it's a new addition to Dave with Frank Skinner asking Master Chefs Greg Wallace and Sarah Millican to disappear their pet peeves faster than a banker disappears with your money in room 101. Now it's still lizard lick towing. Now on Dave, there's no off-ramp for the cheats and chances of this show, just a cul-de-sac with donuts and coffees waiting with the motorway cops. Now it's time for the only panel show you need to wear a gum shield and a jockstrap to survive. It's Mock the Week.
I think you grasp the concept that we'll be seeing throughout today. We all know that Dave's branding and presenting style is quirky and different, and this first ident certainly reflects and represents that. To take a very familiar and relatable scenario, collecting our belongings at the airport, and to add an element of the unfamiliar coming out, so whether that be a cat, some cooked dinner, or the washing up, which is my favourite, it's really quite humorous. I feel the ident is also a prime example of how comedy can be achieved to great effect, without having to do tons and tons of emphasis to get it across. Definitely a strong start for Dave this episode. Let's see whether they can keep up the momentum with the next ident today, and that is Alarm Clock.
24 hours to go broke, starting soon on Dave, with comedians spending money like it's the end of the world. But it's not their money, so it's not the end of the world. In an hour's time, new here to Dave, it's room 101. Now it's Have I Got a Bit More News for You.
Nice idea, but one of the weaker ones for me. Don't get me wrong, the central concept of inserting something that is related to the scene or scenario whilst also being wildly different is still honoured here. A clucking hen next to a series of alarm clocks is quite amusing, but aside from that, nothing really makes it pop or stand out. Maybe if the hen clucking set off all the other alarm clocks, or if it started causing havoc in the shop, I just feel that extra action would have benefited the sequence as a whole. One small detail I like is the Dave logo acting as a price tag underneath the hen. It's just that extra finite detail that I love seeing placed into ident sequences, rather than the main logo be slapped somewhere lazily across the screen. Now then, let's keep on moving to our next sequence today, which is titled Golf Cart.
In half an hour, it's traffic cops here on Dave. Before we get on the road, though, it's time for some political drama. Although it's less Watergate and more tailgate. It's lizard lick towing. George Orwell invented Room 101 as a home of your worst nightmares. Dave was invented to host Room 101 and keep you safe. Fact. Here's Room 101 to prove it. The following show contains strong language as the panel got carried away. But what do you expect? It's the spiritual home of Frankie Boyle. It's Mock the Week.
I feel this one would have been the best of the bunch had it not been split up. Of course, what you've seen are 3 different versions of the same core concept, a bunch of men playing golf, and behind their standard carts, a child's pushcar, which was an absolute blast to use as a kid if some of you remember. The first variant is straightforward. The child's car is just there, and to me, it doesn't feel funny, just slightly awkward. The second variant shows golf clubs pulling the car onto its hind wheels, which is a little more amusing, but it lacks the payoff. Now the third variant got me laughing. How we now see the car pull back and eventually topple over, which is quite frankly hilarious. If they had just stuck to one sequence and used the third clip, which shows the car clearly and then have it fall over, I think it could have really been a winner. But because only 1/3 of the golf cart really nails it for me, it's definitely a bit of a hit or miss overall. Hopefully the next ident will be a solid one, so let's find out that answer with bowls.
In an hour, it's Lizard Lick Towing with a dash to hospital and an anxious wait for Ron and Amy. Now on Dave, there might be some more anxiety if you don't like swearing. It's Russell Howard's Good News Week, and there's some strong language involved.
Sorry guys, but I think this one could be the dullest of the bunch so far. The concept is nice enough, taking a hamster in a ball and pitting it next to the bowl's sport. It works well enough, but seeing the hamster whiz around only holds its charm for so long. And to have 3 variants of essentially the same clip, except that the hamster takes a slightly different route, by the end of it all, it just becomes a little boring. Definitely on the weaker end of the scale, this one, and not one that's going to stick in my mind, at least at all. I daren't say it, but let's hope things improve now with our next ident today, Bike Rack.
New to Dave and Dave HD. It's time for the show where guests get to banish their pet hates to oblivion. That's their pet hates, not their pets. No animals were hurt in the making of this show. It's Room 101. In an hour's time, in an attempt to scare calendar makers everywhere, it's Christmas time on QIXL, followed by brand new 24 Hours to Go Broke. Now, brand new Sin City Motors. Canada has produced an amazing amount of comedians per capita. Must have to develop a sense of humour when it's that cold all the time. In 55 minutes, another one joins us, Stuart Francis on Mock the Week. But now on Dave, more Have I Got a Bit More News for You.
Okay, a little more charming and humorous, but still missing something. Let's talk about the good. The scenario they've got for this one is probably one of the most relatable they could have picked. Chaining up your bike along the rack and suddenly an odd one out shows itself, and as you saw across the 3 variants, those odd ones out can range from a speedboat to a canoe and finally a bumper car. What I feel is missing, however, is just something to really make it truly funny and stand out. Some sequences, like the airport one earlier, didn't need that extra thing in my opinion. However, sequences like this need that final punch or push to really make it memorable for audiences. What is that missing link in this case? Well, that is a good question. It could be something as small as seeing the owner step out of the odd vehicle, or just something a little bit extra in general. Anyhow, let's move on now to our next ident today, and we have a game of darts.
Tonight at 9, the brand new series of Suits continues to tiptoe across legal minefields. Now on Dave, it's time for more Lizard Lick Towing, and they do not tiptoe across anything. They pick it up and slam it down. That's just how they roll. In an hour, celebs head to Iceland for a round of midnight golf on brand new 24 Hours to Go Broke. Now on Dave, it's straight down the fairway with QIXL. And now we have to give a strong language warning right before Mock the Week, which is as surprising as the words World Cup and disappointment in the same sentence.
Again, a nice scenario and items used, but not very rewarding overall. There is an innate charm to seeing a bullseye hitting dart replaced with items such as chicken skewers, a shark and a cactus plant, but again I think it's missing one extra piece of detail that would truly make it stand out. As to what that is on this occasion, I can't actually think of anything in particular. I'd be more interested to hear what you guys think could be added to this one in the comments section, but if you think it works as is, that's fine too. I don't have much else to say on this one, only that it's a nice setting they've chosen, but could definitely have something added. Moving on, our next ident we have today shall be titled Ketchup.
Tonight at 8, it's brand new Lizard Lick Towing. Now, however, you've a chance to catch up on an old episode with some political shenanigans. That is the technical term for it, shenanigans.
Now this one I actually really like. Having a ketchup bottle act in place of a bottle of alcohol is not only funny in how it looks, and is very clearly the odd one out, but for a lot of people in some ways it will be relatable. It may sound weird, but as a kid, sometimes I would like to eat, well, just ketchup. Forget the chips or anything else with it, ketchup would set me right. So the idea that I could just get a pint of ketchup or a bowl of ketchup at a bar is really quite funny to me, though I'm sure for others this sequence may seem like a waste. And besides, if you want a drink version of tomato ketchup, then just order a Bloody Mary. But for me personally, this one really works and has a lot of charm and relatability to it, and dare I say it, it's arguably my favourite of what we have seen so far. However, as always, we must keep pacing on and moving forward, and we shall do so and look at our next ident today, horse.
In an hour's time, it's motorway cops, chasing down illegal shipments of cigarettes, definitely harmful to your health. Now on Dave, it's a double helping of everyone's favourite repo man, it's lizard lick towing. In half an hour, it's where motors meet imagination, on brand new Sin City Motors. Now it's time for money to meet imagination and then disappear, with storage hunters. The following show contains strong language as the panel got carried away, but what do you expect? It's the spiritual home of Frankie Boyle. It's Mock the Week.
I think I've clicked the big problem with these idents. Like I mentioned earlier with the golf cart variants for example, each variant shows a different stage of the scenario, which when watched together do pay off in some way, but when watched individually don't necessarily carry that same comedic weight to it. The concept is there, and it is funny. What's not funny about a horse getting a ticket and then clamped for some sort of parking dispute? However, if they had somehow found a way to tell this whole story in one 30 or even 45-second sequence, then I think it would become much more memorable for audiences when looking back. There's nothing wrong with serialized idents, but if a viewer misses one, they potentially miss out on a chunk of the overall story. But we now have one final ident to look at before I give you my closing thoughts, so let's give it a whirl as we look at Conveyor.
In an hour, it's QIXL with guests Sandy Toxvig, Johnny Vegas and John Lloyd joining Stephen Fry and Alan Davis. Now on Dave, it's time for Motorway Cops with some less distinguished guests appearing. Like father, like son, Steve's kids proved to be quite the boy racers with an ambitious go-karting project down at Sin City Motors, brand new and exclusive to Dave in an hour. First though, double storage hunters. In an hour, it's an evening of new to Dave stuff, starting with David Mitchell shining up his shoes and kicking it old school, with Have I Got a Bit More News for You. Now on Dave, it's QIXL.
Sadly, I think this is a bit of an underwhelming end. Whilst the sequence looks nice and the concept works, to me it's essentially a reskin and repeat of the airport ident we saw at the very beginning. Just a conveyor belt moving seemingly in place things along before we see an odd one out glide across the screen. And the same strengths that the airport ident had, this one does have for the most part as well, but by this point I think the whole gimmick arguably becomes a little stale and dated. It doesn't add anything greatly new to the structure or mix, apart from a change of setting and items, and considering this is coming from Dave, I can't help but feel a little disappointed. Overall then, how do the 2014 idents stack up for Dave? Well, in my view, they are very, very hit or miss. The central concept of placing an odd one out into familiar scenarios is again a great idea and does work in concept really well. However, how much you do with that concept affects the overall result. And whilst Dave gave us numerous settings and scenarios to view, the pace and structure always remains the same. I wish they had added in places a little more action, something different to spice things up a little bit and really tried to get us laughing. Some of these do get us laughing on their own, but a lot of them either fall flat or just feel tired or even a little lazy. So sadly, not the greatest batch of idents for me, and certainly not a batch that are going to stick firmly in my mind for the months and years to come. And so, we've come to the end, but before we go, the final words from our broadcaster. That was all this week for this instalment of the Ident Review. I hope you all enjoyed watching it, and we hope that you tune in next week. You can tune in to the Hits Review on Tuesday, and a special video on Thursday, both of which are broadcast at 8 p.m. But until then, thank you for watching AMTV. Have a good week, and we hope that you join us again soon. Good night.